except for the folks at IHateStarWars.com, we all pretty much love the Cantina scene. It's one of the reasons that Star Wars feels so, well, foreign and so another galaxy. It's the first time on film we ever saw groups of huge amounts of aliens of different species together, even if they weren't all on set together. It's how we think of them in our mind. We kind of put all of those insert shots together and create this amazing bar full of wonderful, alien-friendly and scary characters. And one of the two, or rather two of the two, well, is that even a sentence? I don't know. But two of the characters from the Cantina have a very special, well, I guess, I don't want to call it relationship, but more juxtaposition. They never appear on screen together, ever. Muftak and Kabe. Yet, if you type in Muftak and Kabe into a Google search, you will get tons and tons of images of product, of consumed action figures, statues, Legos, all sorts of things. It's not even until like the third or fourth row down we even get one still image of them from the film. Everything is toy product. So, for two characters that never appeared together on screen, why is it that A, they get put together as toys, and B, that it works so well? It really is an interesting toy mystery that's explained with the logic behind how toys sell and how collectors collect. Now, for starters, to look at the characters, they never had figures in the vintage line, but yet they're characters that show up in fan customs, so it sort of shows there was demand. Back then, people did remember these characters from the Cantina, even if they never stood next to each other. They each had their moments. Muftak, if you recall, was at the same table as Dejar's Pur and one of the singers, or the band members. Cabe, on the other hand, was seen in a close-up ordering a drink. So they both did have close-up moments that they would be recognizable. They weren't in the background or the shadows like Keith Katak is. I will tell you, while Muftak does look like kind of like a fuzzy Muppet, and that approach has been taken with some of the merchandise, because if you can cutify something by, 10%, then you're going to sell by 50%. For me as a kid, his nose, mouth, tongue, whatever that thing is, that creeped the hell out of me. Like, it really scared me as a kid. I was like, what is that? I don't know, it just icked me out. So, yeah, I was never really a big Muftak fan, even though I guess they've sort of retconned it into more of a nose thing, and I don't know. I mean, he's a species, but what am I going to say? It's one of those memories as a kid. I remember this furry white alien from the Cantina with a very bizarre tonguey thing sticking out, and it just creeped me out, man. All right, Cabe, on the other hand, that's the little mousy character who is getting drunk and clearly underage, right? I mean, doesn't he come across as somebody who's like, I shouldn't be ordering this drink? Cabe was a full dress model, meaning he was on the set, but Muftak was not. Muftak was added later in inset shots. So, also one of those, I guess, peculiar things that they're linked together in merchandise, but they weren't even on set together, let alone in the same shot, or recomposed that way. So, what is it about these two characters that makes them, I guess you could say, stand out so much that they're pulled into merchandise over and over again when, yeah, you could say it's because they're both cute, or like you could do cute versions of them and cute cells. I mean, just look at Porgs and, Baby Yoda. But, well, the history of them together is not at all related, I think, to them being thought of as potential plush, or pop Funko cutified characters, but rather it goes back to the only other content we were getting for Star Wars at the time, other than the movies, which were the guidebooks from West End Games. So they created black and white art for almost every Cantina alien and gave them extensive bios and backgrounds. This is well before Decipher. This is before Wikipedia. This is before Steve Sansweet's encyclopedia. So the reason that they are linked together, and we'll get into why they work as toys, is from a factual or from a story standpoint. West End Games, when they put out their guidebooks, fleshed out the background for both of these characters. In addition to doing the the guidebooks, there was also a whole game as well. It was a role play game. I want to say, like think of like Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it wasn't the same type of general category, and there were also little miniatures. So these were actually some of the first non-Kenner toys for Star Wars. And this is where you actually got your first Muftak and Kabe. They're at the bottom left there, Star Wars 86 and Star Wars 87. And you'll even see other characters like Hemdanzan up there. So these characters got their names and their very first background and bio from appearing as little miniatures that if you had this kind of talent you could paint. I don't. I'm jealous of anyone who can. But in the guidebooks that accompanied the game books that fleshed out the world, and again, this is pre-internet. This is Splinter of the Mind's Eye was probably the only other book out. This is like pre-expanded universe. All that stuff were these guidebooks, and this one in particular, the Galaxy Guide #1 from A New Hope, was what featured all of the Cantina aliens. I mean, beyond just the aliens, you got a whole layout of Mos Eisley and how the Cantina looks and diagrams, but every character got their own page, their own original black and white art, and Muftak and Kabe were linked together story-wise. I believe, if I recall, Muftak adopted Kabe. Kabe was found as a runaway in the streets. Again, Wikipedia these days. Go look it up. I'm not here to get into the backgrounds of all the characters. I'm just talking about them as toys. So that's story-wise why they're linked up. But from a toy perspective, they especially work well together because of their proportions. And it's not just because one of them is small and one of them is big. I mean, that does help. But it's because they stand out. If you look at the Cantina aliens as a whole, you, for the most part, get one height. I mean, even Snaggletooth is a little higher in the modern line. And there's not that many characters that change what's called the silhouette of a scene. But Kabe does that very well. So does Muftak. They're both out of sync with the main body type. So it helps to really flush out your bizarre alien scene with all of these characters when you have one that's very small and one that's very big. They stand out. And because that makes them a good pairing from a toy perspective and from a cost perspective. They bring visually a lot more to the scene because they cut that silhouette and make it very different, so it helps you build out an even more crazy Cantina. Muftak was later re-released in the Saga version of the line. He wasn't him, it was a Jedi who was his same species, but they literally just reused the body. You can see from these images, I borrowed from Bantha Tracks and Rebel Scum, both sites that do great visual guides. Can't recommend them enough. The figure that was dressed as a Jedi, it's just the exact same tool. There was no change to it. It was basically a redeco. And it actually, I think it's almost even a better Muftak than Muftak. You could take off the Jedi part. And then continuing in the Saga line, there was also a whole smorgasbord of Cantina aliens released at this time, which we'll get to. We'll get to that in time. It was definitely one of the peaks of the line. And as part of that, Walmart got a subset of repaint figures or re-releases, and one of them was Kabe, who showed up this time with Nabron Leeds, one of the other aliens that was not much larger, but could work for a 2-pack at regular price. And while we haven't gotten Nabron Leeds yet, we'll be getting him actually a couple episodes from now. He came out in a Cantina 3-pack that's not too far off from where we are at this point in the line. And he got a big repaint for this release. The original one there on the left is what we'll be getting to in a few weeks. The white version, the silver one, was the repaint. But Kabe, on the other hand, was as is. There was no change. You got a dramatically new Nebron Leeds, but Kabe was Kabe. So, hey, if you missed him the first time, you had a second shot. Though Muftak, you had to get that original pack. And it was pretty cool because not only did these characters stand out, but you could literally recreate this shot with the action figure. And that's kind of what toy collecting is all about. Pretty awesome. So what do you think? Isn't it kind of weird that two characters that were never on set together or shared screen time wind up being toys together in almost every configuration? Do you have Muftak and Kabe toys? Let me know what your favorites are in the comments below.